you found your seats in the meantime. So can I open the floor for discussion? Maybe I should just count hands and then take the first 3 or 4 questions. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's start on 4. First, can you remember your number? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 1, please.
Okay. What I liked in the last presentation was that there is a possibility to add information about whether the studies were used or not. And I'm asking all of you if that is a goal, that the database also, like this kind of information is really important to us. I work for the French MPA agency, and we're looking also at what is the usefulness of these studies. And let's say the return of experiences about whether these studies were used or not is very important to us. So I'm asking first if, what is the ambitious level of NOAA and of your organizations about what you can do with this information? Do you plan to get a lot of information about this topic? And to the others, is this a goal that you wish to have in your databases, like return of experiences?
So the way we've been thinking about that is in that comment section for each of the studies, we'd like to guide people maybe with a pop-up that says, you know, here are a few questions to think about while you're looking at the study. Have you used this study before? How did you use it? Did you find fault? And so guide people through contributing that way. I don't think we'll add another field because we try to keep the number of fields relatively small. But to put it in that wiki format, that's our plan.
Okay, and Janet, would one of you like to?
Our database, we actually do track the number of references that a study has. You know, there's ways now to look at that automatically, to data mine that from the internet. And so, you know, we've talked about having that be part of our business intelligence, yeah, currently it's a manual process. You know, we know when a study is referenced, or we see when the study is referenced, and we note it.
And so, you know, relative to this, we're working in a lot of data poor areas. Mm-hmm. So in the United States, that method works better, I think, than it does in Equatorial Africa.
The database, yeah, our database is all the climates, but less marine nearshore and marine ecosystem services. We've just recently did a push to incorporate nearshore studies.
Okay. Does that answer your question sufficiently? Then
Yes,
we go to number 2.
Yeah. You will not add an indicator of usefulness of these studies in the databases? This kind of indicator?
Indicator of usefulness.
Or
depends on who is using it.
yeah,
Yes.
but it can be a yes or no. I mean,
No. Both questions, no.
okay.
You can go to the journal, and there they provide how many citations. But it's, of course, I understand the need for this information, but it's a rather complex thing, which we would like to facilitate if resources were available.
And it's like the quality question. Was it useful for benefit transfer? No, but it completely changed the way I think about this system. So, I mean, that's why we didn't want to become a benefits transfer database, because we wanted it to be more useful for many different people, but not as useful for any specific use. So to help people who are building benefits transfer databases, help people who are trying to get first-time knowledge about this, help people understand maybe what the drivers are, and who's using these ecosystem services, which may be more important than knowing what the value of those services.
I'm thinking how to do this in terms of to have a kind of a useful discussion, because some people might react. It's singing around now, I think, the microphone. To the discussion. Actually, the person who has number 2 should now ask his or her question, but Matt raised his hand. Maybe you want to react to this discussion, or?
The question also concerned the question because it was on data quality. because especially when you are talking about database, especially for really a scientific
Can I interrupt you just 1 second? Maybe you can stand up and briefly say your name and organization where you are from.
Yeah, my name is Fongwa Enes. I am from BPO Cottbus, Department of Ecosystem and Environmental Informatics. So especially my professor is really concerned with data quality. And when it comes to database and metadata that comes from different angles, how do you integrate it into your database and the quality that for using this data, because the main target is the end user, and the end user must know the quality of the information that they want to use. So I don't know whether there are some quality aspect taken into consideration in this database, especially in terms of the data intelligence for maybe management purpose, planning and other things.
Are you asking a particular person?
Especially the speaker who more talk about data intelligence.
Yeah, so we are working currently to get into the database. It needs to go through a review, then that review needs to get peer reviewed, and then it needs to be signed off. So we have 3 steps to get into the database. We, as I said, originally we used to send the spreadsheet around, and when we would find errors in the calculations, I explained how difficult it is to come up with the calculations. And you know, we can be reading the same article and we can come up with different calculations, especially if the GIS data isn't there or whatever, right? So, so one of the things that we hope to work through, we have another meeting tomorrow. We're going to work through the workflow for how studies actually get validated and make it in the database. Currently, in the SERVS model, what happens is the economist, as an economist, you nominate a study, and the study goes into a holding area. And when you log in, it recognizes who you are, and you can browse the holding area and select a study to validate. And once you've validated it, then it gets the final step, which is it goes through one of our economists, and we review it and say yes. So that's currently the workflow, but we want to have it be a much more collaborative process and not have ourselves be the bottleneck. So this is kind of the shared ownership part of the piece. But quality is absolutely important, and I'll tell you, it has not happened yet, but we know, it hasn't happened that we've been called on it, but we have had references in our studies and seen the same reference in another study with a different value. And, you know, getting that phone call, if we get that phone call, we need to investigate it, and that's a lot of hours to do. And so we want to be real clear on how we actually got to the value. So every study that we've been doing since the original ESP, when we include a study, we go through and we've been cleansing the values.
Yeah, quality control is indeed a crucial issue, and we are definitely looking into that as well for ESPD. I don't know, Sandra, do you want to add something to
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a matter of transparency as well. Yeah. And I mean, in this review process, supposed to be clear to other users and people who use the data.
And some of this is an art, right? So certain ecosystem values are based on commodities, and so you can tell whether it's a good study or not. But if it's a non-market study, I've produced many papers that said, this is the value with this model. You change the model a little bit and you get this value. Now, which one is right? Well, we don't have a tangible non-market value to compare this to. So we end up looking at statistical fit and all of these other things. So determining what's high quality is very difficult, especially as you move away from the commodities. And the second thing is that Sander showed that he had sort of 150 values for corals and not very many for the other marine areas. That's because his quality filter is very high, and our quality filter doesn't exist because we want you to go in and read the paper and decide whether this is sufficiently good for you.
Okay. Let's go to question number 3.
Okay, I'm Christian Schlatter from Switzerland. I was wondering if you have any intentions, all of you, to make it broader, let's say, to include further information, because a lot of activities are currently going on in terms of mainstreaming available information. I was specifically in the last presentation thinking about fishery data, for instance, which might be of interest to compare with what you were collecting on your side.
I can be very short on this side. We only want, as an ESP, we would like to feed into these bigger databases, sophisticated, in my opinion, sophisticated methods, and that also, I think, enables comparison with biological data or other types of data.
And I'd say yes, and I would extend that beyond fisheries to think about social development indices, poverty measures, all of these other things that we've heard the past days are important and aren't captured in these valuations. But not in very much a library sort of way, not in a metadata or a meta-analysis sort of way.
Maybe that's also where the development of these biome groups, or also thematic groups, could help. Within IUCN there is a special group on fisheries, so maybe when we get them into the whole process of the ESP database, we could engage them in this kind of, in answering these kind of questions. Yes.
And partially, I would say that actually what we are aiming at is to provide as much information on the biophysical, so to say, background of the value. This might already help the user, but it doesn't. It is not a direct link with another database.
Not yet, but we are thinking in this, behind you is Rolf Algemade from the Dutch Environmental Assessment Agency, by coincidence sitting just behind you. And the Dutch Environmental Assessment Agency is working for a couple of years already on a biophysical database of ecosystem services. And we want to link them with the database that we have developed in Wageningen. So it's something for the future. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that, Rob?
Well, it's actually, well, you said we are already working a few years on that, but it's going rather slowly, and I know there are a lot of data out there, but it's very difficult to extract it from application and so on.
In a way, it's more difficult than putting the economic data together.
I think so, that it's much more difficult. Although there are different data sets on specific topics, like forestry, like fisheries, there are plenty of data about that. So, but the other ecosystem services which are not really traditionally accounted for, that's the most difficult one.
Okay, question number 4.
Yes, my question was related with the discussion it was covered in terms of data quality and uncertainties, but also linked to the fact of scale. Because then, Jennifer, you mentioned, you do scenarios, and we have in different fields, these scenarios, and from the area I'm working biodiversity issues. And then I am absolutely concerned in terms of the data you plug in, because I think we still are in this period of what and how to measure, and this how is going to be linked with values or non-valuable issues. So I really wonder how this issue from data quality to scales to this sort of magic indicator of scenarios, how the database is going to deal with that. Because I'm very afraid of users then taking decisions, important decisions as you mentioned, without regard of this. And the second part of the question is linked to this as well, how you deal with, this is for all, with these political issues. I mean, the data are good, the scenarios you develop are the good ones. So of course you've made decisions that are quite important, and they are related to important economic issues as well. How privacy of data will work as well. So I think there's an issue related directly with quality and privacy.
Okay, who wants to answer? And try to keep it short because I have one more round of questions.
Let me distinguish two different things, and I think these things got blended a little bit in Josh's talk this morning too. There's economic data as information, and then there's economic decision analysis, right? And so a lot of the things that you described really are about decisions.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, the second part, yeah.
That's right. So, but, you know, different kinds of data have different kinds of limitations and confidentiality rules. And so I think all we can do is present as much data as possible, at least in the marine ecosystem services, and tell you as much about these data as possible to help inform the decisions. But the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership, as it stands now, is not any kind of decision tool. And I don't even like to call it a decision support tool. It's simply an information tool, just like a library. I mean, you walk in a library and you don't know the answers to life's most important questions, but you can at least find out some information about it.
Yeah, but in your case, Jennifer, if I understand, you can run actually scenarios from the...
Yes, you can run scenarios. But again, I mean, similar approach is, you know, you want to think about, remember when I laid out the steps? And so valuation really is the why. You know, why do we want to even think about this? And then modeling and mapping helps you hone in on exactly what the questions are you need to answer, and what the area of focus should be, and then the analysis, and then leading eventually to the funding mechanism. So we look at valuation early on as just capturing, again, the aha moment. Do you have anything to add to that, Dave?
Yeah, I would say it justifies why investment is needed, whether it's a conservation, setting an area aside, or investing in restoration. So just like if you don't know if the value of your house is $1 or $1 million, you know, should you put a new roof on it? And the valuation stage says there's value here, and it's kind of could be a very large scale or whatever, so it deserves further analysis to get to decision making. It's not the end-all be-all of a decision tool, but it moves you further down that chain to get to the decision.
And basically, we also provide additional information in that decision-making situation of trade-offs, and we don't have control over what people do with that data. We can just try to put the best data we can find on the web. But one important thing to keep in mind is that there is, well, first of all, if you don't provide the data, somebody else will do, and until now it was usually zero, just put no value on it and just cut down the forest and do something else with it. So at least any estimate would be better than no estimate in this case. And another thing to keep in mind in trying to collect data and get kind of as precise numbers as possible to inform decision making, there is no such thing, I think, as a right value or price for those ecosystem services. And I came across a saying, and I forgot when and where, but it's better to be roughly right than precisely wrong. And I think many of the economic models try to be precisely wrong, because we know for sure that the outcome, with all the assumptions being made, will never be close even to the real value of that particular ecosystem service. So then I think it's much better to be roughly right about that service. I see lots of hands going up, and I want to give Matt also a chance, because he raised his hands too. But Dave, yeah, a quick
just a quick addition. Economic assets go up and down. So, you know, we're uncomfortable with the fact that we don't know enough about these values. But traditionally, Washington Mutual Bank was valued at $3.6 billion in January 2008, but sold for $1.6 billion by September. And so, you know, economists and a lot of people in markets are used to the kind of ranges that we experience in ecosystem services with the assets they deal with all the time. Meaning we should be a little more comfortable with that uncertainty.
And hence a range and an appraisal approach.
Okay, Matt, you have been very patient in the back of the room. You wanted to react to the first question already.
Yeah, it was just
briefly,
following up on the first question, without knowing too much, having come in a bit late to the things you're putting together. But if there's a question about the utility of a particular study or approach or tool, is there any way within the systems you're putting together of actually using the user community to evaluate that in the way that consumer websites like TripAdvisor and Amazon do, that people who are looking at this and taking can say, yeah, this was really good, and that this was less good for these reasons. Is that something that your systems could adopt?
They're all nodding their heads,
Yes,
so that's good.
it's part of it, yes,
It's essential.
yes.
Okay, that's a very quick answer. We have 1 minute left, maybe for one last question.
Yeah, I'm pretty much aware of, but at the same time very astonished that there is so little attention attached to forest biomes. As you mentioned, apart from tropical forests. But obviously there is no experts group, not with the IUCN and also not with ESP, focusing forest biomes. And I would like to know, what's your experience? Is it because the forestry sectors and administrations are still so powerful and well established that they are self-sufficient? There's lots and lots of information concerning forests from the university side, the science side, as well as from practitioners, but obviously it doesn't show up, I don't know.
Yeah, apart from tropical forests, indeed, from the other forests,
Apart from tropical forests.
someone wants to react?
Based in the Pacific Northwest, we're all about forestry. So we have a lot of studies on boreal forests and conifer forests, and so I think we have a lot of studies on forests.
In terms of ecosystem services?
In terms of ecosystem services, yeah. And anytime we do a study, we collect the studies and do a literature review for that particular area, and always bringing in. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of literature available.
There's a lot of it is great literature, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that at least where we are, and in Canada, forest practices are looking to be more sustainable themselves. They're trying to understand, how can we get in on this carbon thing? And boy, do we have assets that provide flood protection? Maybe the flood district should be paying us not to knock the log. So they're very interested in this because, again, they're the provisioners of ecosystem services, and they are looking for potential additional income.
Okay, it's 12:30, so I think I should wrap
We
up.
have one more response.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, I was just also thinking that, indeed,
A bit louder,
in
please.
commission, living system management is not recognized as a hot topic, which doesn't reflect the scientific community. But the good thing about this commission is very flexible and can always initiate new group and years of this Biome, so it is definitely a place to be accommodated.
Maybe to add to that, is what Jelena showed was the working groups within the Commission on Ecosystem Management. But within IUCN there is a whole forest.
There are
there are other groups.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to close the session by, I guess, a simple conclusion. We're working hard on all those databases, but there's still a lot to be done. If you are a member of ESP, we will keep you posted on the developments of those databases, and at some point you can access them. I guess if you type in Google and search for these kind of activities that we are working on, you'll find it as well. It would be better to become part of the community, I guess, then you get direct information. Thanks to the panel members and presenters. Enjoy your lunch, and after lunch we will continue with the